Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Matt. Welcome to this video, which is going to be talking about the 10-day Vipassana meditation that I have just recently completed here in Thailand, out in Kanchanaburi. So if you are interested in you're thinking about doing this particular course, then hopefully this video will cover some of the questions that you may have in mind. We'll talk about my experience getting there, the meditations themselves, the day-to-day stuff, the program, how it all works, and what I suggested, and maybe some things that could be done differently and so forth. So all right, so basically it is around about 5-hour bus ride outside of Bangkok, which you can pay a $25 or 25 Australian dollar fee, which gives you a return ticket there and back. Otherwise you can get yourself there as well. But yeah, pretty cruisy. That's what most people did. There were about 100 people in total, not obviously on the bus. There was, I think, about 50 or 60 on the bus. And in total, they ended up being about 30 men and roughly 70 women. So almost like a 2-to-1 ratio, which apparently is pretty common. So we spent, roughly 5 hours getting out to the jungle in Kanchanaburi, which sort of borders near Burma. And yeah, we basically arrived that day, on day 0, I guess, and we register, hand your phone in, hand your wallet in, hand any books in, and basically just grab your luggage and head to your rooms. Now, did have sort of different rooms. The older people tended to get nicer rooms, so we found out at the end. But us younger people, we got the bottom of the barrel, call it. But to be honest, I kind of enjoyed it. It was part of the process, so whatever. So yeah, you basically just walk in and your room is essentially just a bed. They give you half a pillow, a sheet, which is probably a third of a sheet, especially because I'm 6'3". And then just a shower and toilet sort of for your ensuite. That's all you get. That's all you need, to be honest. They give you a fan at least, so that's nice. Now, this time of year in May, it is extremely hot here when I was in Kanchanaburi. It was very warm, very humid as well. So the days were like 35, 36, 37 degrees Celsius with decent amount of humidity. So you can imagine it was quite warm. We did get a few bouts of rain and a little bit of thunder as well, which everyone was looking forward to cool things down. But even then, it would just sort of heat back up again. So yeah, apparently outside of that though, they don't normally have aircon in the hall because it doesn't normally get that hot. So we kind of suffered a bit in terms of that. But I spoke to a friend who had done it in the past, and he said it was extremely cold when he went there. So you can't have good always, right? So day 1 starts, and basically the day looks like this. So you wake up at 4 a.m. to a bell, and the first bell is basically saying get up, get ready, you have a shower if you want to, wash your face. I actually found myself doing 30 push-ups every morning. I just found it was like a nice way to just wake up and get ready for the day. It wasn't like extremely exhausting. I didn't want to like get sore or anything or make it a workout. It was more just like a mental prep, like I'm gonna crush the day sort of thing. So that was like important for me. So I persisted with that. 4:30 comes, another bell goes off saying, yep, we're starting the meditation, which will go till 6 o'clock. Now that first meditation, you have the option of doing it either in your room or in the hall. I do think that they should make that one mandatory in the hall, just because I think it will increase the attendance and compliance and going through the process of waking up, meditating and so forth, just because it sort of gives you the option to sleep in a little bit, especially towards the mid to end week when you're feeling a little bit exhausted, which is actually kind of what happened. I noted that a lot of people stopped coming to the hall for that first session. I always made an effort to go to the hall, as for me personally, I'm a morning person, so my morning sessions were much better than my night sessions, and I really valued that. So you meditate till 6 o'clock, and then you go and have breakfast. That will last until 7 o'clock, then you'll have till 8 o'clock. Then, so 6 till 7:30. And then you have from 8 o'clock till 9 o'clock, I believe. You go to the hall and you do a group meditation. That's where everyone must go to the hall. Okay, this one's not optional, so that will go for about an hour. Then each time you leave the hall between meditations, you have a 5-minute rest period. Just go outside, walk around and so forth, and then come back into the meditation. Then the next period would go from 9 till 11, so a 2-hour stint or a 3-hour stint essentially. Then that would carry us into lunch, which would go from 11 till 12. From 12 to 1, it was rest time / interviews with the teacher. So if you had any questions around the technique that you felt like you might have been struggling with, or you wanted clarity, this was a good opportunity for you to go and ask them and try and learn a little bit more. And then from 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock, they would have a mandatory group sitting in the hall again. And then from 2 till 3:30, I think, they would have another semi-optional group hall / at-home meditation. It was kind of strange. So some days they had the old students that had repeated the course had to stay, and the new students were allowed to go back if they wanted to, and then they switched it around as well. Also during this time, it was a group sitting with the teacher in their little private space as well. So at lunch, you can just go on one-on-one. This particular instance was mandatory. They did this 3 times, I believe, when they would teach the different instructions or teachings throughout the course. I think day 2, 1, 3, and 5. So this was basically, you and 3 to 4 other students sitting in the room. He would say, how are you feeling? What's going on? Are you aware of this, aware of that? And people would talk and so forth, which was pretty cool to sort of hear how other people might have been experiencing or struggling with the same issues as you can, because obviously you can't talk during the whole thing as well. As noble silence. Can't remember if I mentioned that. So then that will carry forward until roughly, 2 o'clock. 2:30, and then from then until 5 o'clock, you'll have another another optional in the hall or in the private cabins or in your accommodation. 5 o'clock comes, you get a tea break, which is basically like a reduced lunch, and I'll go through the meals in a second. And then from 6 till 7, another group sitting in the hall. 7 till 8, you do what they call a discourse. So that's basically where the guy who sort of has been teaching the course all around the world, Goenka, SN Goenka, he is basically on a video, and he'll give you sort of some story time, some purpose and meaning as to why we did certain things or what we're learning and why this is important and how it can be practiced and so forth. And that will go for about an hour as well. Then we do another group sitting, and then it's sort of wrapping up around 9:30, where you'll head to bed, shower, clean teeth, whatever, back up again at 4 a.m. So those are pretty much the days. I think there was 4 group sittings in total roughly, and about 9 to 10 hours of meditation most days. So pretty full on. It's pretty much just wake up, meditate, eat, meditate, sleep, meditate, and that's what you want. You want to fully immerse yourself in this experience. It's 10 days. It's a reasonably long time out of your normal busy schedules, but at the same time, when you finish, you kind of think this isn't long enough and you need a lot more of it. So it's kind of interesting how it flips. Also found that experience with my phone too. I was constantly checking messages and social media before going in, and afterwards I was really hesitant to check it. I actually had my 30th birthday as well on day 9, and I kind of chose that particular time period from 18 to 30 of April, where I was aware that my birthday was going to be there, and I was celebrating my birthday meditating, which is an extremely strange and foreign experience for me. Typically I'd be getting drunk. I guess it's just a sign of getting older now, right? And just wanting to realign my values a little bit more. But anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. Not that it really affected my day or anything, because for me personally, I don't normally celebrate them too much. I think if anything, my mum is probably more excited than I am. I mean, to be fair, it's more her day than I am as well. So I think in terms of food, basically all the meals are vegetarian and all the meals are absolutely delicious. Now, to be fair, I do tend to like everything and there's nothing I don't like, but I will say that the meals were phenomenal. They have a kitchen down there and they'll bring up the meals. So it was sort of set up into 3 parts. So table 1, there was always bananas, watermelons, and then potentially things like dragon fruit, green mangoes, pineapple, just a bunch of different fruits. The end table always had things like bread, spreads, jam, butter, marmalade, Milo, coffee, tea, all that jazz, dry biscuits. So there was always some food around. And then in the main table, they would always bring up the cooked meal. So that was typically some sort of, usually there was about 3 or 4 options. So some sort of like rice or noodles, like maybe like a stir fry or a curry, tofu, these sort of things. Morning glory, which is like the vegetables, lots of chili as well. A few things were quite spicy, as you'd expect in Thailand. And yeah, that was pretty much the food. And like I say, it was half the stuff I didn't even know what it was, but it was phenomenal. And I would like just be very happy to continue eating that sort of food. It was great. So if you're a bit concerned about that, don't be at all. It's really, really good. So that's the days, that's the food. In terms of my experience, Day two, I did struggle quite a bit in terms of I had a bit of anxiety and I was like, why am I here? This is pointless. I'm not sure if this is for me, so forth. And it's just the unease, right? It's the settling in. And I sort of have found that in my life, anytime I get those nerves or those emotions, it's actually a good thing because it means there's something changing or something that's happening. I feel like that's something that we should all lean on a little bit more. Day 5 and day 6 were definitely my best days. I found that those days I'd sort of increased my learning quite a lot. So I started to understand the Vipassana meditation techniques a lot more. And then I had really got into a groove of waking up early. I was comfortable in the environment. So I feel like those were my best days. Day 8 was definitely my worst day in terms of mental fatigue. Definitely the highs and lows were just going crazy. I feel like that day was almost like a write-off for me. There was sometimes in the hall, I was trying to meditate and my thoughts would just go on these big tangents. I was getting so frustrated at myself and I was trying to continue to refocus myself, but it just couldn't happen. And then I just sort of accepted. I said, you know what? This is just going to be a bin day and that's fine. These things happen. Not every day is going to be good. As long as you're continuing to try to make the effort towards doing, the meditations and so forth. But honestly, at some point, I just kind of feel like I gave up a little bit and lost a little bit of hope in myself, which is kind of sad. But then the next day, I sort of bounced all that back and that hope was, I guess, rejuvenated. And yeah, day 10, then you finish the Noble Silence halfway through the day. And it's kind of funny because when the teacher was like, okay, you guys can talk now, no one said anything for a minute. And it's kind of a strange experience after you haven't been using your tongue and talking. And then all of a sudden one guy was like, wow. It's kind of everyone started laughing. It was a nice icebreaker. We started communicating and I was really able to observe my neighbor about when he was high and when he was low. And he said the same thing about me. So it was super interesting now that we weren't able to relay that to each other and talk about our feelings, that we had to just sort of, observe and manage our own, which was really cool. I also found that people, particularly after the meditations, had their own little place. I would always go into this high little chair or area where it would look over on top of the hill. Some people would always go for a walk around the little designated area. One guy always sat on this other particular chair and always had his tea there. Everyone just had their little rituals and things, and it really made me realize that humans are simply just very much creatures of habit and our behaviors. So if you feel like you've got some bad habits in your life, it's definitely important to become aware of them, maybe write them down, think about them, and try to do some other habits, I guess, that could distract you or replace those in order to increase those good habits that you're after. I did experience some frustration and some, I guess, maybe there was a bit of resentment, maybe there was a bit of, I don't know, but definitely some agitation towards two particular individuals on two different circumstances, and they were both right at the start in the first 3 days. So this was kind of interesting. Now, the first time was basically my neighbor. So our cabins were sort of split into two, and my neighbor, he would always just take forever to get ready. The bell would go off, he would just get in the shower, and it's the bell goes off because we need to be there and getting ready. Every time we'd come home from lunch or from the meditation at nighttime, he would always just be 5 or 10 minutes late. And I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like, what are you doing? And I'm watching him walking around and he's just slow and just taking his time. There's also burping and farting next door really loud and kind of disturbing me a bit. And I was kind of just this guy's just doing my head in. And then I started to think about it a little bit more, and I was like, you know what? He's not doing anything wrong. He's just being himself. And me getting frustrated and having these emotions towards him, this is just causing my own suffering. And I'm looking for a solution, but the solution is right here. It's not in him. He doesn't need to change who he is. He's just doing his thing, right? So if I'm getting pissed off or annoyed, this is my problem, okay? And I'm probably doing things that were annoying him. But again, it's interesting when you're not able to really communicate that with someone. Yeah, it really does become difficult. And then essentially what you do is you just look inside yourself, and then all of a sudden you find that these frustrations are really just temporary and things just pass away. So just on this as well, the second experience I had was with so when I was sitting at lunch, it was sort of in the corner, an L shape. So I'm sitting here, my other friendly neighbor's on this side, and we're both facing this way, right? So the corner's here, my other neighbor's out that way. So we've sort of got our backs to each other in a way, if that makes sense. And the first experience that I have is we're all standing up, lining up to get our main food at lunchtime. And there's a bit of a gap between everyone, and everyone's, whatever, trying to put stuff in their bowl. And this guy just comes in, swan dives in with his spoon. He's already got his plate. He just comes in, grabs his like little teaspoon and just pulls out a bunch of chili flakes and then just walks out. And I'm just like, man, you could have just waited like an extra 5 or so seconds and it would have just like been fine. But he just like dived in, cut in front of me, and I was a bit like, what the fuck? And then during lunch, after we'd finished eating, we coincidentally finished eating at the same time. And I stood up and I started to walk over to where you wash your plates, and he just like stood up and flung his chair out so fast. And felt like it was intentional, but I doubt it was, to be honest. It'd be, pretty like, malicious of him to do that. I just don't think it would be intentional. It wouldn't make any sense. It was just me in my own head. And then the cherry on the cake was after lunch, we went to our group meditation, and on the way back, he basically grabbed his sandals and just like threw them on the ground as hard as he could from head height. So it was super loud, as you can imagine, like a big, and it's just like, what are you doing, dude? Like, well, you're so disruptive, you're so noisy. And he didn't know, he didn't care, he didn't even know what he was doing. And so I ended up just going to the teacher. I said, listen, I'm having some real difficulty. I'm experiencing these emotions towards one of the other group members. Do you have any recommendations on how the technique of the meditation might be able to help overcome this? And he said, yeah, absolutely. All you do is you feel the emotion rise, you become aware of it, you let it sit there, and then what you do is you come back to the meditation and you refocus. And then all of a sudden you'll find that emotion passes, and then a new thought comes in and replaces that, and then a new one replaces that, and a new one replaces that. It's impermanent. Nothing is persistent and stays the same. It's always changing. So whatever you're feeling right now at that moment, whether it's high, whether it's low, it's not going to be there, right? So that's why it's important to just be understanding of the present and being, I guess, compassionate and showing that love to yourself and going, look, this is the moment. This is all we really have. We can't change the past. We can't anticipate the future. We can try to put a bit of a story in our head and how we think it might go and fantasize about that. But to be honest, that's not necessarily the best thing either, because then if it doesn't happen, or we're creating a false sense of reality because we don't even know what's going to happen. All that we really have is making sure that we're conscious right now and that we're hyper aware. So yeah, that was pretty interesting what he said. And I guess the biggest takeaway from the Vipassana really was that there's everything in life we do are either because of cravings or aversions. So it's very typical that humans will do something because they want to either seek to gain pleasure or avoid pain. So I think typically as well, people want to avoid pain more than want to seek pleasure. But it's really interesting, like, even just, for example, me right now with my hands, I'm leaning on the desk, it's more comfortable for me. Maybe I should just sit up straight with my back. These little things that we don't tend to notice, especially when our attention is being divided amongst lights, sounds, computers, phones, advertising, people, all these noises, music, whatever. These are things that are distracting us. And really, if you have that isolation time, that time to just sit with yourself, be very simplistic, you can really start to bring some things up onto the surface and potentially overcome your own misery, which essentially is what the Vipassana is about, seeing things for the truth. There was a bit of a hesitation that it might have been a bit of like a religious sort of culty feel. You could argue that there was a bit of a culty feel to some degree, but I think it was more on the back of they were trying to really douse the meditation technique itself, because if people weren't 100% immersed or they were a bit skeptical, you're not going to get the most out of it. So looking back on it, I don't feel like it was, like I say, culty, although at the time I did feel a bit like, oh, why are they doing this sort of stuff? And now I understand a lot more. It doesn't matter what religion you are, whether you're Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, or whatever you follow, whoever your God is. The Vipassana is not about that. It's about looking into and trying to enter you and basically go into these layers into your subconscious mind, where it is where all these deep-rooted behavior patterns and thoughts tend to happen. And so if you actually spend time analyzing those, you can access them, and then all of a sudden they rise up and you're able to overcome them and deal with them. So it's super interesting. Would I recommend it? 100%. I would recommend it to everyone. 10 days is not a long time. Again, the ROI that you can get from doing this will potentially change your life, especially if you can continue to implement the recommended meditations, which they recommend 2 hours a day, 1 in the morning and 1 at night. But anything is going to be good. The most important thing is that you're just aware of the benefits of this. Go through the experience as well. Me talking to you about this right now probably won't even be enough. Like I say, you really need to do it. I think that I'm going to try and do this every year. I believe that that's pretty possible, pretty realistic, and I do think that, again, it's worth it. They even have up to 15, 30, and I think 60-day courses as well, which is like, well, but I could potentially see how that would benefit from a lot of people too. So depending on your work schedule, your life, and so forth. But again, I would highly recommend that you would make that a priority more than anything. Not something you go, doing 3 months, 6 months, 2 months, whatever, this comes up. It's like, no, like make it a priority, make time for it now, because the sooner you can learn and go through this experience, the better off your life will actually be. I think that's all. Yeah, if there's anything else that you guys might be unsure about, or things that you want to clarify or ask any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Again, 10 out of 10 would recommend. Again, it's all free. The only thing they sort of ask is that there is a bit of a donation at the end. You can donate whatever you want, whether it's $10 or $500, they don't care. It's more about the fact that you're just giving something of what you can. There's no judgment. I actually ended up donating a book about meditation, and like a sort of a Buddhism book that I had bought in Bangkok before I left, as I felt like that was going to give a bit more value. But anyway, again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll try and get back to you guys, and hopefully I will potentially maybe even see some of you guys on the next Vipassana meditation. I don't think I'll do it again in Kanchanaburi, but I'll potentially try and do it somewhere else. But yeah, all the best, guys. Happy meditating if you do persist with this, and otherwise, hope you're living your best life. All right, see you guys in the next video.